Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint for self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution. The key to happiness is having our needs met. Our needs can range from basic all the way to really complicated, but when we do not feel fulfilled, it's likely because our basic needs are not being met, whether from ourselves or by others. In today's one-on-one deep dive, we're going to look at what it means to have your needs unmet, what a need is, how to identify whether or not you have gaps in your needs, and what to do about it if you do. This pattern starts in childhood when we're ignored or shamed, or we adapt to the needs of other people around us. And when we show up as adults, we often fight ourselves, sacrificing our needs and our wants and relationships at the expense of our own happiness. Meeting our own needs helps us get out of discontentment and into balance. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So let's not waste one single moment. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. We're talking about how to deal with your unmet needs. And the reason why is I see trauma every single day without fail. And if I don't see the actual event that caused the trauma, I see the end result. As humans, we all have needs. We have basic needs like food, water, and shelter. We have more complex needs like love and belonging and self-esteem and safety. And when our needs are met, we feel happy. We feel connected to our lives. We are safe. We have fulfillment. But when our needs are unmet, we have this huge, massive undoing of negativity, of negative emotions, sadness, upset, anxiety. There's so many ways that our unmet needs show up. And then, of course, there's different ways that we cope with our unmet needs. And usually we end up doing things that work against us. You've heard the term coping mechanism. I like to talk about safety mechanisms and coping mechanisms. Let's break those down because truly what I want to do today is one, recognize what a need is, how it shows up when our needs are not being met, and then what can we do about it so that we can start meeting our own needs in a healthy way? Because we've all been there. We've all felt a bit off or like something was missing or we couldn't quite put our finger on what the problem was, or we have restless nights or this nagging sense of dissatisfaction that despite the goodness of our day, we still find a way to feel empty or that we can't recharge. We have these needs that need to be met. And if we don't meet them, that is the exact feeling that keeps coming up over and over and over again. So let's talk about our 5 areas of needs. You've heard me talk about the 5 master areas of our lives: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial. Of course, those move around depending on what we're working on. But we also have this list of needs that we have to have met in order for us to feel like we're living a healthy and balanced life. So we have physical needs. We need air and water and food and shelter and sleep. We have safety needs. Security, employment, resources, knowing that we have a safe environment in our homes, in our friendships, in our communities, in our reality. We have emotional needs: love, affection, attention, family, friendships, connection. We have self-esteem needs: being able to use our voice, that freedom of expression, this ability to see ourselves. And then we have spiritual needs, which we will call meeting one's fullest potential or self-actualization, that freedom from within. It's important to understand what these are for you: the physical, safety, emotional, self esteem, and spiritual needs. And I want to take a little deeper glance into it because if we don't have them, like I just said, we feel anxious and lonely and stressed. And often we cannot find motivation, and most certainly we cannot keep our motivation. Often, when people feel like they are failing in their healing journey, it's the middle part where they get stuck. The beginning, there's excitement, even though there's a little bit of wariness. We're going to do this. We're going to move through all these things that are causing me so much pain. The middle is where growth happens. The expansion is there. They really begin to focus, right? And the hard work is done in this space. And we learn that the majority of our needs haven't been met at all, if ever. And it's here that we grow so aware and sometimes so tired because we are trying to catch up, to live through the middle, to be able to meet the things that should have been done for us from childhood in relationships. And we become our own advocate in meeting our needs. And it's hard work. It's not a little bit of work, it's hard work. So let's give some signs that these needs are not being met. And then let's talk about how we deal with the unmet needs. First, you know what the needs are, but the actual definition of need is a physiological or psychological requirement for the well-being of a human that allows them to thrive, feel connected with their life, and feel like they have a sense of belonging and purpose. That's really what a need is. We talked about the different areas of needs, but let's break it down. What are some signs that your physical needs are not being met? Not meeting your physical basic needs can impact not only your emotional and mental health, but also your physical health. So if you're always tired, if you find yourself frequently feeling exhausted, it may be that you're not meeting the need of sleep or nutrition. If you fall sick often, your immune system is taking a hit, most likely because you're not prioritizing exercise, or you're not eating well, or you're not taking care of the body the way that it needs. That can lead to frequent headaches or other ailments, and even things like heart disease, stroke, even cancer. We're seeing when the immune system is often offline, these big things start to break down in the body. If you're cranky and moody all the time, it may be because you're not physically taking care of yourself. If you're stressed out, you may not be getting enough rest. You're going through the ups and downs of life. If you're struggling to concentrate and you're not going through menopause or perimenopause, it could be that you're experiencing brain fog because of dehydration, a poor diet, or a lack of activity. I often will make people who are doing a huge healing journey start with moderating their water, making sure they're getting that all in, looking at their food, taking in their physical needs in order to do the hard work of their healing journey that's emotional and mental and pushes against their safety. If you're craving foods that are not healthy, it could be because there's a deficiency in your body. Same thing with your weight fluctuating. It may be a sign that you're not balanced in your levels. These are big physical signs. Safety needs, or feeling safe and secure, are fundamental to your overall well-being. And if this isn't met, there's some big things that I want to point to that you may be experiencing. The first is that you're constantly on edge. If you don't feel safe, if you have a lot of uncertainty, you're going to find yourself always feeling anxious or on edge as you look to see what's going to keep you safe or not safe. You're probably going to have trust issues because when your sense of safety is compromised, you're going to struggle to trust people, even those closest to you, which could lead to strained relationships and even self-isolation. Because if there is no safety, there is certainly no trust. Safety first, then trust. You're also likely to avoid people and places Because if certain people, places, or situations make you feel uncomfortable or safe, you're going to go out of your way to avoid them because your brain is going to give you that instruction that, hey, this doesn't feel good, and so we need to avoid it. Again, your brain's number one job, safety. You've heard me say that ad nauseum here, and I say it because sometimes we do things or we don't do things and we can't wrap our head around why. And the truth is, we're just trying to keep ourselves safe. You may also experience paranoia, where you're suspicious of everything, you're mistrusting of everyone, you don't believe anything, you're always on the computer double checking, you're Googling, you're trying to figure out different things. This could be because you have a lack of safety. You're also hyper alert. You find it hard to relax. You have a hard time just being settled. People who have high levels of trauma have a very hard time sitting. They have a hard time allowing themselves to rest. I know I personally have spent many years saying, I'm sorry, I'm taking a seat. I'm sorry for not being productive. I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for that. My husband's always like, hello, you can rest. And even I have to make sure that I do those things and that I don't stay on hyper alert. I see it over and over again with people with high trauma levels. It could be that you're not sleeping well, because if you're in financial insecurity or you're physically in danger, your concerns are going to keep you up at night. And after a while, when you tell the brain, this is the time that we should be awake, your body is going to oblige. And of course, if you're using substances at all to cope with your fears or your anxieties, you are not feeling safe. Let's talk about emotional needs, because when I see people with past experiences that are so devastating, and we have a lot of anxiety, depression, a lot of emotional instability, even a lot of negative self-talk, I can point to the fact that their emotional needs are not being seen, met, fulfilled. Not having your emotional needs makes you so deeply disconnected, so deeply unhappy. And it is a requirement for us to be connected to people, to have a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of being seen. When you don't feel seen, when you don't feel heard, oftentimes we feel extremely lonely. We feel misunderstood, and most certainly we do not feel like we are worthy of validation. And so we seek it elsewhere, and we dive into whoever is going to give it to us. And generally, when we're asking someone to care for our emotions, they're going to do it the best way that best suits them. It's not always something that's positive. Sometimes people will manipulate situations because they know that they're going to be able to get you to do what they need, to push their agenda, to make them feel best. And yet you are still left with feeling lonely and unseen. If your emotional needs are not met, I guarantee you, I'm willing to throw a penny bet on this right now. I guarantee you, you spend an awful lot of time on social media, or you text instead of engaging in face-to-face. You do not call, you text. You would rather hide in the closet than actually engage in person. You're probably even ordering all your groceries. You're avoiding big places. We sometimes call it social anxiety. If you could see me, I'm doing air quotes right now. But a lot of times it's just because our emotional needs aren't being met. And once we're out in the wild, in the store, doing the things, we have a hard time connecting with people. And it feels harder to do that. And so we just don't want to do it at all. If your emotional needs are not being met, I can almost guarantee you also feel lonely, disconnected, alone, even when you're surrounded by people, because there's no deep connection. You're probably also emotionally exhausted. There's this constant sense of emptiness or sadness, and it feels like you're not worthy of love and support and understanding, even though that is so far from the truth. But that's how we feel when our emotional needs are not being met. This next thing is something that I hear so often. I just feel numb. People who have sat in sessions with me and we've gone on these healing journeys come in numb. And then we rip the Band-Aid off and they are then exposed to all these feelings. And they'll say, this is too much. I want to put the Band-Aid back on and forget about it. Why is all this coming up? And the answer is you've detached from your emotions that were too painful to bear. And then we put them right front and center. And now you're having to go through them instead of just going through the motions. The world around you does not operate on numbness. So if your emotional needs are not being met and numb is your choice, is your choice behavior, understand it only works for so long. At some point, the body has to get rid of the emotions, and we see strokes. We see these massive breakdowns. We see anxiety that is crippling. Why? Because our emotions turn back on. If your emotional needs are not being met, you probably have a hard time just expressing your emotions. You struggle to open up. You struggle to be vulnerable. You would rather dismiss them, which of course that also means that you avoid intimacy, that deep connection, even with our partners, right? Our partners will often feel that fear of rejection that comes up, and they feel like they can't meet your emotional needs. And it gets messy, right? So sex is off the table, holding hands, hugging, kissing, off the table, feeling emotionally connected, off the table, intimacy on every level, physical, emotional, mental, even financial and spiritual goes to the wayside. And then, of course, if your emotional needs are not being met, we go into coping mechanisms. Let's stop there. Let's talk about safety. Let's talk about coping. These mechanisms. So our safety mechanisms are these things that we put in place to keep ourselves safe. They are sort of the walls, the boundary lines that we put up in order to help us feel safe. So if you've had sexual trauma in the past, a safety mechanism may be that you do not have alone time with someone that you don't know. That's a safety mechanism. A coping mechanism is what you use when safety has been rocked. So for some people, that's eating, drugs, shopping, right? So we'll talk more about the coping and safety mechanisms in just a moment, but it's important to understand that if our emotional needs are not being met, we are probably leaning into habits like overeating, substance abuse, excess screen time. We can even flip it to the positive things that turn to a negative: exercise, journaling, meditation. Anything that doesn't have a balance to it can turn unhealthy, even if the practice itself is healthy. Now let's talk about esteem needs not being met. This is also the result of trauma, the result of things not working out the way that they, quote, should. I hate that word, by the way, but here we are using it. All right. So when your esteem needs are not being met, it affects your confidence and your overall self-worth. Here's some signs that those needs are not being met. You're insecure. You talk about your abilities, your appearance, your worthiness, left and right. You make jokes out of it. You really do everything you can to pinpoint and point out the flaws that you believe you have in order that other people don't do it first. You're also very self-critical. That negative self-talk, that doubting every decision, constantly criticizing yourself, putting yourself down, is a result of your esteem needs not being met, whether from you, by you, or other people. You need other people's approval, right? If you lack self-confidence, you're going to need validation from other people, period. No way around it. If I am not doing well in my thought process, if I do not have an overall sense of self-worth or confidence, I'm going to lean on you to fill me up. It's exhausting. Okay? For the people that you're asking to do that for you, it's exhausting. They want to say to you, hey, you know what? I've told you 700 times, love you, you're wonderful, but why don't you gain some self-confidence? And it's not that easy, right? It's so not easy. But that is the reaction that a lot of people who are not trained therapists want to say, because they can't care for your feelings all the time while also caring for their own. You also may fear failure. You're going to shy away from new opportunities and challenges, and you're going to be afraid of your own potential, and that sucks. You must understand that your fear of failure comes from this sense of believing in your own potential. It's lacking. You often will feel worthless, whether at work or in relationships or social settings. You'd rather go unnoticed, unappreciated, leading into this sense of worth that is lack. You probably also compare yourself to others. You probably even compare your children to others. You don't measure up. You don't have self-respect. You don't have self-worth. You feel like a fraud. Imposter syndrome. There is a podcast episode that I did. I'm going to link it in the show notes about imposter syndrome and how to get out of it. But we really have a hard time feeling good and confident in our own abilities. We can't also accept compliments from other people. We dismiss them. We feel like it's undeserved or unappreciated or unnecessary, and we push against it. Or we tell people, shut up, it's not that big of a deal. You also probably resent others for their success. There's a jealousy because it seems so easy for them, which is such bullshit, right? Not everything is easy. And just because you're seeing the end result doesn't mean that it wasn't a battlefield to get to that place. But understand, if you value yourself, you're not resentful of other people's achievements. You want to dive in and clap for them. Now let's go to spiritual needs. If your spiritual needs are not met, you often feel adrift, unmotivated. You don't know your purpose. You feel restless. There's no inspiration. You feel creatively blocked, which is extremely demotivating. You feel disconnected, that you're not a part of something larger than yourself, a sense of universal meaning, or that you're out of sync with the rest of the world. You don't know peace. You can't meet it. You have a hard time getting there. Anxiety, stress, and this uneasiness blocks that ability to get to center. And you find yourself struggling every single day, and joy and happiness just aren't on the table. If you identified with any or all of those, because it's likely that you did, I need you to understand that the behaviors that you have been using to get out of those things, like emotional eating or shopping sprees or substance abuse or self-harm or passive-aggressive behavior, or whatever it is that you've used as these coping mechanisms or adaptive mechanisms, understand it doesn't change anything. It won't change anything. Not a single thing is changed when you use those things in order to try to meet a need, because those things don't actually meet a need. Those things cover up the need not being met. Let me say that again. You know those times when something just pours out of your mouth and you just want to put a hand stamp on it, like that is it? This is it. Those things that you're using, those coping mechanisms that you're trying to use to meet your needs, don't do it. They cover up the process of meeting the needs. They block you. You have to identify what's missing. Let's go through those steps. Finding what's missing in your life is a deeply personal journey. It takes exploration and discovery and a willingness to get in the middle, in the thick of it all. Put your hands in it, get dirty, come up with all the things that are hard, and lay it on the table. The way we do that is reflect on your life. Take some time to reflect. Think about where you've been unhappy or frustrated and where is it coming from? Are there specific areas? Is it work, relationship, your growth, your past, your current, what you think about your future? What feels lacking? What feels like it's missing? And you might say all of those things. And I'm going to say to you, okay, that tells me you need to go on a trauma healing journey. If everything in your life feels like it doesn't work right now, it's probably because we're not connected with life itself. Every area of our needs are not being met because perhaps we've never learned how to meet those needs. Perhaps we've never had those needs met. Perhaps we are in a space where we've been told we have to show up for everyone else and there is no space for us. And if that's the truth, you're always going to feel like there's something missing. So reflect. Where is this coming from? How are you going to get out of the frustration? And then I want you to identify the gaps. Think about what's missing in your daily life. Is it connectivity? Is it motivation? Is it joy? Is it laughter? Is it a relationship? What do you wish you had more of? What do you wish that you could go to sleep to and wake up to? For some people, it's this sense of something bigger than themselves. They need that. We all do. But perhaps that's the biggest missing gap. Identify it. For others, it's the motivation, the will to even get out of bed sometimes. The space where you want more, you know it rationally, but you're having a hard time actually getting up and getting there. Where is the gap? And when you know those things, listen to your emotions. Remember, emotions are not facts, right? Neither are thoughts. But listen. Pay attention to the feeling of sadness. Pay attention to the anxiety. Pay attention to the restlessness. Pay attention. Now that I have your attention, seriously, what are your emotions saying? If you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me talk about going through the emotional list, the 22 core emotions, and listing your definitions. If you've never done that, now is the time. Now is the time to put your definitions in place so that you have a framework. How can you address something if you do not know it? Listen to the emotions, know what they mean to you, and see what's going on within and around you. Your emotions are clues as to what path you need to be taking. I often will ask you to list and answer 4 questions. What do I want? What do I need? How do I want to feel? And how am I going to get there? In those answers are emotions, are the gaps, are the reflections. The next thing you can do is talk to someone, whether that's a best friend or a therapist or a life coach or whatever it is. Someone who can offer some insights that you may not be seeing about yourself. I know I myself use my husband as my sounding board, and I'll often say, can you tell me what you think about X, Y, and Z? And when he offers it to me, 2 things come up. 1, I either listen, or 2, I feel this immediate sense of stonewalling what he's saying. No, you're wrong. And then I can begin to justify. And it's in those moments that I listen to the emotions that come up. I take a step back and say, I don't actually have to connect to what you're saying. I don't say this out loud. It's a thought process. I can actually listen to what you're saying, listen to your feedback in this area that I'm struggling or I feel unfulfilled in, and I can hear what you have to say from your perspective. It doesn't mean I have to own it. It just means this is your perspective of the question that I asked you. Same for a therapist. I often answer questions for a lot of people and they'll go, well, that's not really what I meant. I'm like, then give me more context. This is what needs to happen if you want to identify what's missing. The next thing that you can do is try new things. Try on new activities, right? What's something different that you've always wanted to do that's going to push you outside of your comfort zone? What's missing oftentimes is something you haven't yet explored. So what is it? And the last piece to all of this is to take small steps. Be patient in your discovery process. I do not ever, and I mean ever, advise that you clear the deck of your life. I don't tell you to go sweep everything off the side and start over. It is a dramatic way to borrow more trouble. Start with small steps towards your fulfillment. Build gradually as you move forward and be patient in the process. It takes time to figure out what the hell's missing, okay? And then you have to be patient with yourself as you build new things. You also have to be patient with yourself as you go back to the old unmet needs. When you go back to the safety mechanisms, when you go back to the coping mechanisms, when you're, 50 bags of chips in, or you've eaten all of the Oreos, or you've taken a handful of pills, or you've bought all the things from Amazon, whatever it is, know that your brain is going to do whatever it is used to. Whatever the instruction manual says, it will show up for. So you have to be patient in the steps. Everything is a gradual movement. Once you identify how a lack of meeting your needs is showing up, you can change it. You may not be able to easily do it on your own. Get out of your own way and ask for help. Seriously, ask for help. There are many people that are qualified to help you. The first step in living a happier and more fulfilled life is knowing that you have unmet needs. And when you pay attention to the signs and you take proactive steps to address them, you move yourself towards the life you want. It's okay to seek help. It's okay to look at the whole journey and say, it's going to take a hot minute, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's critical for your overall well-being to address what you need. To live in an optimal level of life, of achievement, of goals, of healthy relationships, it means that it takes work. Nothing comes for free. Nothing. And so you have to look at what works. Put some healthy coping mechanisms in place. Practice the self-care. Engage in the healthy activities that you enjoy. Identify your overall needs that you are meeting. Express your emotions, set boundaries, say no, set realistic goals, practice mindfulness. Slow down. Challenge those negative thoughts that come up. Accept yourself for who you are right now, not differently, not wish it away, but who are you today? Be patient. Be kind. Look for what you need. And remember that you're not alone. So many of us walk this earth with so many unmet needs, and we find ways to be offended and hurt all the time. But if you want change, it means that you have to get out of the deficiency and grow. It means that you have to look at what is dissatisfying and put safety, stability, health, desire, admiration, wish, anticipation. You see all those healthy, clean words coming up. You have to put those in place. And when you do that, it's the essential piece to getting your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life, please subscribe. And also follow me on social media if you're not already at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, Threads, Pinterest, and YouTube. You can also visit my website where you'll find the blog, a merch store, videos, and courses that have just launched, as well as downloads at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. Please also feel free to share this episode with other people who may need it, as it helps spread this message. Thank you once again for being the best part of this community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.